Hi, everybody. I'm Wendy Murdoch, and this is Webinars with Wendy. I've been doing a series of webinars during the pandemic, largely to entertain myself, talk to my friends, and learn something along the way. Today, my guest is Kathleen Prasad, and I have not met her before, so this is going to be really fun. This week, I have some guests that I actually don't know, and that's really fun because it's I never know what's going to happen or what we're going to talk about. So let's see. Oh, so some people are going through the different levels in Reiki. I asked them to put it in the chat. That's great. So Kathleen, please give us like how did you get into Reiki and what's your background in this?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, Wendy, thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm super excited to be here because I love horses so much, and also because I love to share Reiki, which is kind of my life's work, really accidentally, but here I am. I have an educational company called Animal Reiki Source, and I train people in Animal Reiki. And I also have a nonprofit, Shelter Animal Reiki Association, and we are worldwide, and we share Reiki. We volunteer Reiki in shelters and sanctuaries, and we also train staff and volunteers in shelters to do this with the animals in their care.
So have you had horses as a child?
So no, I took lessons as a child, and when I grew up, I saved my money and finally got my first horse when I was about 28 or 29.
Oh, good.
And have been just horsey.
So you have horses now.
I had two horses. My old guy passed away almost 2 years ago, and then so I have one horse now. I have a paint Kodiak. And we just do trail, and we also take dressage lessons, and we just have a lot of fun together. He's very spoiled.
So how did you discover, or how did you find out about Reiki? I mean,
yeah, it was kind of an accident back in 1998. So I've been actually doing Reiki for 22 years, and I originally found it through my mother-in-law. And she was really excited because she'd gotten a session, a treatment, and she's like, "Oh, you have to try this." And I was like, "That sounds weird, but I have to humor her because she's my mother-in-law." So I went and got a treatment, and I found it so relaxing, and it filled me with so much well-being. I was like, "Oh my God, I have to learn this," because I had grown up since I was about 3 or 4, as long as I can remember. Having severe panic attacks and like severe anxiety disorder, and just growing up with that, and my world
ever
becoming
since you were really little.
Yes, and I'm an empath as well, so I think a lot of that made it I'm just highly sensitive to my environment, to other people's emotions, so it was kind of difficult growing up with that sensitivity, and I think that kind of turned into anxiety around large crowds and crowded places. So I would just avoid stuff. But then with Reiki, I felt a relief, like a deep relief inside of me, and like a grounding and like a peace that I hadn't felt ever, I think.
I don't want to ask you how old you are, but it sounds like you spent a lot of years kind of dealing with that anxiety and not really having a good solution to it. But I'm sure your horses helped.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. Animals got me through my life. Animals have always been my best friends. And as I said, I took lessons from when I was like probably in 5th and 6th grade, kind of all the way through high school. And then I kind of didn't ride much until I became a teacher, a middle school teacher. And then I worked every summer, and I saved up my money so that I could get a horse, at some point in my adult life. And so that is how horses came back into my life. And Reiki came into my life for human Reiki, for my own anxiety. But the animals, like my horse, at the time I was sponsoring a horse, and also my dog that lived with me and my sister's guinea pig, they were so like drawn to Reiki. I was absolutely fascinated, and I kind of accidentally kind of melded my love of animals and just being with them with Reiki, this amazingly peaceful practice.
Okay, so we have to, for those who have never heard of it, can you give us a really succinct definition of Reiki?
Reiki means spiritual energy, and it refers to like the energy that quantum physicists talk about, the energy that everything is made up of, but we practice it as a system, like a spiritual practice. And so we learn certain techniques to, I guess you'd say, bring out our spiritual energy, or learn how to shine that beautiful essence or that spiritual energy in the world. So it's really a spiritual practice. But when we practice Reiki for ourselves, it shines outward, it radiates from us, and animals are so sensitive. And so they feel that and they're drawn to it. So for me, it's really peacefulness, compassion, like almost like bringing out your highest potential as a human being, you know, living with kindness, living with gratitude, living with compassion, living in balance, you know?
So, you know, I know some people, when they hear the word spiritual and they hear the word energy, they get all freaked out because, you know, we have it's true, right? It's true. But it's because we have so many connotations around those words.
Right.
And, you know, I find for me, I really like to bring it back, like you said, to quantum physics. Like energy is actually a measurable thing. I mean, there's an electromagnetic field. So it's not some mystery thing. We can actually measure the energy field of the human body. That has been done. As a scientist, I have a master's degree in equine reproductive physiology, which has nothing to do with really what I do now. But, you know, as a scientist, like, I studied a lot of chemistry and biochemistry. And so you start to learn about atoms, and atoms have a nucleus and they have electrons, and these electrons travel around it and they create a field. And so when and then the other way to think about energy for me is the simple way of, you know, like you turn on a light and something turns it on. It's, and that's, you know, energy.
And the idea is energy in our bodies, like our sort of natural space is balanced. And then we get out of balance through stress, getting exposed to, you know, illness, or having, you know, a disease, or even being stressed, right? And our body, you know, goes into like the fight or flight stress response, or we're in that rest and digest, you know, calm. And so they've done studies that show that Reiki activates the parasympathetic response, or your relaxation response in your body. So when we create those conditions in our bodies, then everything heals. Right? You're in the optimum state for healing.
We've had a lot of conversations on these webinars about the parasympathetic, talking about the vagal response and also just the neurologic system. So they have done studies to show that it switches you to parasympathetic.
Yes, and so that's what we know Reiki does. Like beyond that, I can tell you a lot of things I've seen that I think that creates trust, which can heal, you know, trauma from past abuse. And
you know, there's a lot of validation to that, because again, if we go back to looking at the vagal nerve system, which is, am I safe? Right? That's its number one question. And I've had about 4 webinars on that. And we look at, you know, we need some sympathetic so we can act, but we need the parasympathetic also. And it's this nice little sine wave balance. And so this is really interesting that you're talking about the parasympathetic system, because we know that that's so necessary for us to be able to live if you will, a life where we're wired for connection and not into the protection that you talk about with like stress and PTSD. Because, you know, one thing about COVID is and I've said this a few times, but COVID has given us the opportunity to understand how horses feel all the time. You know, like in that very more alert state of, am I safe? Is this okay? What's going over there? Does that person have a mask? Are you infected? Are you okay? Are you going to give my space? Or are you going to crowd me? And this is what horses experience. So Reiki sounds like a way that we can help ourselves and our animals be more in that parasympathetic, especially during this time of stress that we're all experiencing.
Yes, absolutely. So it's like indirectly, it's like supporting our immune system. It's supporting, you know, it's supporting our nervous system. It's supporting our digestive system. It's supporting everything indirectly, because it is creating these conditions that are conducive to our bodies, minds, and spirits working in harmony, which is really our natural state when we're not being pulled off it, you know, through our stressors in our lives, you know. So I think how I really first connected with Animal Reiki was in the shelters, because I was walking dogs twice a week at our local animal shelter. And imagine the stress, right? You've been in an animal shelter and the dogs are barking, and they come from all kinds of traumas and abuse and neglect, and just, you see it all there. They come in with all kinds of conditions. And to see the profound change that they experienced in, you know, a Reiki session was, it like gave my life this purpose that I just was like, oh my God, because, you know, I spent my whole life being anxious and traumatized. And here I was able to go into a traumatic situation and create peace. And I'm like, oh my God, this is my life's purpose. Like, I know exactly how these animals feel, and I know exactly how to help them right now. And it can happen like this. And
you know,
so,
you bring up such a great point. And I think this is, you know, when I talk to a lot of my guests, it's our life experience that was our challenge that becomes our greatest gift. Like, you know, how many years, 1984, that's a long time ago. You know, I had a horse flip over on me and break my hip socket. He punched the femur through the socket and bruised 2 inches of the sciatic nerve, blah, 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 blah. You know, wow. And it took me a lot but it was that moment that led me to so many things to be where I am now. And it sounds like for you, it's so cool. I mean, cool. It's that you're able to take your life experience of anxiety so that you can relate to and understand what these dogs in shelters are going through. And I think that's so, like I tell people all the time, I've never had a baby. And when somebody wants to talk to me about babies, I am like baby phobic. I've held one once in my entire life, and that's it. But if you tell me, oh, I broke my neck yesterday and I'm going to have surgery and I might, you know, I mangled I'm like, yeah, cool. Because I can so relate. And I think that this is where we can take what we think of as our weaknesses and make them our greatest strengths. And that sounds like what you've done with your experience of taking what appears to be the weakness of your anxiety and sensitivities and be able to go into shelters and then offer something to, I think that's marvelous.
Well, and ultimately that's the gift that Reiki offers us, because Reiki is ultimately a meditation practice, and it centers around mindfulness and presence, like open-hearted, compassionate presence without judgment, like holding space. And we can only really do that if we've been somewhere really difficult and we know what that's like. And because most of the time when, you know, if we're faced with a challenge or something difficult, or for you, you know, children, then you run, right? You're like, oh my God, I can't deal with this. So I'm going to run, or I'm going to try, if it's a problem, I'm going to try to fix it. Right. And so Reiki ultimately is showing us how that our greatest healing power as human beings is just being. We are a human being, yeah, and being with another, whether it's an animal or a person ultimately, but just offering our presence and just being there with them through that.
It's so interesting because we get so caught up in the doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and our lives are revolved around all the, you know, what do you do? You meet somebody, what do you do? Right? Not who are you, what do you do? And it's so insidious in our culture, especially the American culture, that it's what we do that seems to give us worth, as opposed to that we that we simply are here, and that has value. So let me kind of, when you talk about spiritual, can you give us a definition that is not too woo-woo?
So to me, like, there's no dogma in Reiki. So there's no like spirit guides or, you know, there's no religious affiliation. There's no, you know, it's very, for me, it's, well, I'll bring it back to the central teachings of Reiki, which are the Reiki precepts, which are for today only: do not anger, do not worry, be grateful, work diligently, be kind to others. So if we follow these, it's not easy.
No, but can you say them again, and I'm going to type them in the chat.
Do not anger, for today only. Do not anger. Do not worry. Be grateful.
Oh, hang on. My typos.
Work diligently. Be kind to others.
You know, this is like how we should all be, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it's, you know, what does it take to get there? And that's where the system of Reiki has like a lot of breathing techniques. We have a lot of mental focus techniques that bring us back. We have a hand you know, healing that we do mostly with people, although with horses as well, if they choose it. Hands being the instruments of compassion in this case.
Oh, that's lovely.
So really just, to me, the spiritual being is the being that lives in that space of the precepts, that lives in that space of balance, of kindness, of compassion, of gratitude. Like, just imagine if we could always let go of our anger and our worry and be just, oh, I'm so grateful in this moment, and I'm just doing kindness everywhere I go. Like, imagine what the world would be like. Imagine what horses' experiences would be like if everybody was like that, right?
Yeah, but you know, on the other side of it, I'm just going to play a little devil's advocate, is that we are human and we do have these other emotions and they do come out. So, you know, like I sometimes I lose it. You know, I mean, I get on a phone call with a service guy that's supposed to have fixed some problem that I can't fix, and it's like in this black hole and I can't do it, and I just lose it. And I think be kind to others should include be kind to ourselves.
Absolutely. And I mean, there are some versions that say be compassionate to yourself and others. There's different versions of it that include that, actually. But I think really it's not about being perfect, it's about being mindful. So like when I become angry, I notice, wow, I'm really angry right now. Whereas what do we usually do? We just react, and then maybe we're angry for weeks or months or years, and we're burying heavily that anger, and it starts to make us sick. You know what I mean? Same with worry. So I think, you know, seeing that worry and anger as it comes through and letting it go is sort of the where the mindfulness comes in. That doesn't mean we don't get angry and worried anymore, but we realize, wow, if I really hold on to that and I dig into it, this is going to be very unhealthy for me. So I notice, wow, I'm really angry right now, and then I practice, you know, letting it go.
and you mentioned the word meditation, because I've done Vipassana meditation. I don't know if you're familiar with Vipassana.
I've heard of it.
9 days in silence. And if anybody knows me, the idea of doing 9 days in silence, they probably think it's crazy. But I was so at peace with that whole idea of not talking to anyone. But it was, and one of the principles of Vipassana meditation was to allow your thoughts to go through without what they called cravings or aversions, without trying to hold on to it or try to kick it away, and just notice it kind of like a river flowing by. And what you're describing sounds very much to me similar in when we look at sort of the underpinnings of so many concepts, so many different ideas, they come back to these principles, that these are sort of archetypal principles that we can find in many, many different disciplines and concepts and teachings.
And so to me, I guess all of those, it's nurturing our spirit. And you know, what is that spirit? Everybody will have a different definition of what it is. The way that I like to see it as, it's like my essence. It's like my inner essence. So, you know, maybe when I look in the mirror, I looked a certain way when I was a baby. And then when I was 5, I looked different. And then when I was 20, I looked different. And now I look older, but it's still me, like that essence. And I believe, you know, when we pass away, that our energy continues. It just leaves the physical, but that essence, you know, nothing is created or destroyed. It just changes form, right?
Right.
So that to me is spirit. But I think in our human culture, we we crush our spirit in a way. We crush it with stress. We crush it with fear, with expectation. We build walls around ourselves. We wear masks. And all of this is very stifling and unhealthy for our spirit. And so when we can peel back those layers and take off the mask and just shine this beautiful inner light that is, you know, really us at our highest and best self, you know,
and
that to me is what Reiki, that's what Reiki brings.
It's so much easier to see that with animals, isn't it? Because they don't have the frontal lobe that layers on all this other stuff. And I think that's probably why so many people love being around it. Like my cats, they're, you know, they're ridiculous and they're crazy and they're running our lives. There's the two of them. But they are who they are. There's no couching. There's no cover. There's no pretend. They just are crazy cats. And so I think that's probably a lot why we're attracted to animals, because there isn't the facade. There isn't.
It's so refreshing. It's so refreshing, isn't it? And I think for me, that's why Reiki became so real in my life, because I'm so, in a way, I'm so suspicious of humans. And if I would do Reiki for a person and they'd be like, oh, that was amazing, I'd be like, yeah, was it? Because maybe you're just humoring me, or are you making this up? Like, are you convincing yourself? You know what I mean? But I always felt like when I was with animals, when I was with my horse, or when I was with the dogs in the shelter, that, you know, it just was what it was. And that was so powerful to me that it really took over my life. And so I've been doing this full time since 2004.
So 98 was when you first had your first session, and then you started to train. So who did you train with?
I've trained over the years with 4 different teachers. My original teacher who brought me to Reiki, who gave me my first treatment, who taught me my first classes, is a woman named Martha Lucas in Denver, Colorado. And she's actually an acupuncturist by trade, but she also is a Reiki teacher. And then I taught with a woman here locally in the Oakland area, Meg Sullivan, and I learned with the Reiki Alliance lineage, which is from one of the main leaders in the world of Reiki, Mrs. Takata, who brought Reiki from Japan to the United States. So I studied with her for several years, and then I studied with Franz Stina of the International House of Reiki, and then most recently, I have a Japanese teacher, Hyakuten Inamoto, who has a Reiki school called Komyo Reiki Do, and so I'm very blessed to have been able to pilgrimage to Japan last year and walk with him to the center of where Reiki began and visit Usui's grave. Usui's the person who started Reiki back in the early 1900s. And so I kind of have gone international with my Reiki journey at this point. So I have done hundreds of hours of human Reiki training over the last 22 years. And I'm really blessed. All of my teachers are, have brought so much to me, but I also count among my teachers the animals. And often horses have been such amazing teachers to me. And so I call my teachings the Let Animals Lead method of Animal Reiki, because what I learned very quickly was that as much as we try to understand energy, which is to me just a subtle way of communicating in the world, animals just get it better than we do. So best thing we can do is listen and learn from them. And so so much of what I teach now is really lessons that animals taught me, lessons about listening, lessons about being patient, lessons about letting go of control, and just really allowing the animals to kind of come forward in their own way. And these are all just to me, so I'm so grateful for those animal teachers over so many years.
Absolutely. So, but you piqued my interest about how Reiki got started. So obviously do you speak Japanese?
No.
Okay. So I don't speak any foreign languages, so that would be my concern. But okay. So tell us where Reiki got started. Who started it and how did that?
A man named Mikao Usui in Japan actually started Reiki, and he actually, didn't start Reiki until in his 60s, later in life. And he was a very spiritual person and studied a lot of different things. But he never quite found like his purpose, his meaning in life. And so one day he decided to walk up to Mount Karama and meditate for 21 days. And he's like, I am going to find the purpose of my life or die trying. He's like, I'm doing this. And so he fasted and he meditated for 21 days in the forest. And I was able to go up there and meditate up there as well last year, which was amazing. So beautiful up there. And so he had an enlightenment experience on the last day, on the final day, where he understood that we're all one, that we're all connected. And, these Reiki precepts came to him as truth, like this is truth. And so he walked down the mountain and he opened a clinic and he started helping people that were sick, people that, were in pain, people that were suffering. And he started traveling around Japan teaching people. So ultimately it was a spiritual practice to remember your oneness or your connection to all beings. But in doing that, in searching and digging deep to find that connection that we have with the universe and with nature and with the earth, you know what happens? You heal. You heal, your body heals, your mind heals, your spirit heals. It's a very healing, beautiful journey. And so that's why we see it now in the United States as a healing practice. And now here in the United States for people, it's very much a hands-on healing modality, like a hands-on energy therapy.
Right.
But the way that I practice it with animals is more in line with how Usui practiced it as a spiritual practice. Because animals don't often see hands as something healing. They see them as dangerous. They see them as, something bad happened to them. And also because of the wisdom I talked about, animals have so much wisdom and understanding. And so we can't just go into a Reiki session and go, I'm here to heal you. Let's go. And the animal's like,
No. But that's
no.
I don't Are you familiar with Jill Bolte Taylor at all?
No.
Oh, okay. Jill Bolte Taylor is a neuroscientist and she had a massive stroke. She's written a book. It's called My Stroke of Insight. And why I'm bringing this up is that it was a golf ball size bleed on the left side of her brain. And as she was going through the stroke, she was trying to call for help. But the thing that was so fascinating was that it was on the side of her brain that recognized self. And so she kept flipping back between, I need to get help, and we're all one.
Wow.
And she does a TED Talk, and if you ever get the chance, just go to the TED Talks and put in Jill Bolte Taylor because it'll make you cry. It's so powerful because she totally recovered. But her experience, I think that this is where animals are so much simpler because animals don't have the sort of the sense of I that people have. And it's that sense of I that you're talking about to me, or how I hear it, is the part where we get into the doing and that who I am and what I have to do and this and this. But when we get to the place, either through meditation or Reiki or whatever calls us, where we recognize that it's we, that is the power, that is the magic, that we're not individual and unique, but we are all connected. And I just love how you've said that, because that just brought that back to me, that memory of her. And animals, like you say, are simpler. And the minute we drop that ego that I am going to, and that how are you, I think that's so powerful and important to remember.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why, another reason why they have to lead us there, because they already know this and we need to learn it from them. But if we can create that receptive space through our Reiki meditation that they can step into and share that, it's like a partnership. When an animal joins a Reiki session, we all heal. We all go deeper into that sense of connectedness. Like, it doesn't matter that you're a horse and I'm a person. Like, we are here together. And this deep sense of peace enfolds all of us. And it's so beautiful, you know? And I don't think you have to do Reiki to find that with horses, because they'll draw you in. So, you know, I know so many people. I have a good friend. She suffered from severe depression, and her horse healed her of that. Just going out on the trails every day with her horse, he literally healed her of that.
Yeah.
So horses, their energy, their presence, you know, they're already so healing. So you know, I always think the least I can do as a human being is try to be my best, try to be at my best, at my most present, at my most grateful and most compassionate and kind when I'm with my animals. And that to me is what Reiki brings to my life.
So it seems to me, from what I understand of Reiki, is that you're essentially honing the natural life force that we all have. And it's a question, just like anything, of developing a skill that so many people say, oh, I can't do that. But in fact, they probably already are. And that's where the ego gets in the way, that we think, oh, I can't, right? But that's what that is. So tell me if I'm wrong here, but it sounds to me like Reiki is simply harnessing and honing and developing the skill that we innately have.
Yeah, absolutely. Reiki is nothing separate from us. It is not some power that if you take a class, I'll give you this new power. It's really uncovering that beautiful essence that it was there all along, but we forgot about it, you know? And I often have students take a class and go, this feels familiar. Like when I was little and I would sit with my cat and I would feel this overwhelming sense of love and peace. And I'm feeling that again. And I haven't felt that since I was young. Like I just like boarded myself up. And so I think like for me too, animals brought me that peace and that love when anxiety took it away so much in my life. But when I was with my cat or my dog or my horse, I could feel that again. So to me, it's like Reiki is just one way for us to enhance that. And like you said, it's a practice. So if we never practice it,
right,
it's harder. And I see it as I practice this every single day so that when life gets hard, I'm ready. And, you know, back in 2011, I had breast cancer and I had been doing Reiki at that time for 13 years. And I'm so grateful to my practice because it helped me and the animals' presence and my meditation. It's really what got me through that very difficult, scary journey. And I thought, oh, what do people do who don't have Reiki? Like, oh my God, you know, so I always say,
you know, they white knuckle it and
yes, and
make war with their body. And I've always had kind of a, concern about that. But so somebody's popped something in the chat that I was thinking about, and I'm glad she brought it up. Have they ever, do you know about heart math? Have you ever heard of heart math?
I've heard of heart math and I don't know a lot about it, but I think they've done studies with like the energy fields of horses and how horses and humans affect each other when they're together and stuff like that.
And they talk about heart coherence. I would be so curious to as an experiment, because I'm a scientist, right? That I'm convinced that when you're doing a Reiki session, you are in that place of heart math, heart coherence, because again, there's these, you know, there's lots of different ways in, and heart math is simply a biofeedback system so that it tells us, yeah, we're in that place of coherence with our heart. Linda Tellington-Jones talks about heart hugs. And so, you know, it's so interesting because when we look at all these different concepts, methods, and systems, you know, you can't get away from the basic principles that are rooted in our being.
Yes. It's nothing separate from us. It's nothing woo-woo or wild or crazy. I often say it's like coming home to yourself, remembering yourself, remembering you that you probably have lost since you were a child, maybe. You know, and that's so beautiful. It's so simple.
So did you start working on animals right away when you discovered Reiki? I'm sure.
Accidentally, yes. Like when I learned Reiki and I learned this hands-on healing for when I felt anxious, which was daily. So I would sit down and I would do my practice. And my dog, he was an Australian Shepherd mix, and he was always like at my ankle, but respectful distance. He was always 3 to 5 feet from me and always followed me around and at my ankle, right? But I would be sitting on the couch, you know, doing Reiki, and he would come and lay on top of my feet, like in a weird, like uncomfortable way. Like, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like the first couple times I just kind of chuckled and I just kept doing my session. And then like the third day, it dawned on me, I think he's like feeling Reiki and he's like resonating with it. So I sat down and I put my hands on him and he rolled on his side and went, oh, finally, Mom, God, you know? And I was like, there was two things that happened in that moment. I realized, number one, wow, animals respond to Reiki just like people do. That's amazing. But the second thing was, how did he know what it was already? Because I wasn't intending to do anything to him. He already like figured it out and was like basking in the space without my knowledge. So that is something that, brought me on that journey of letting animals lead us, because they do totally get this beautiful, open-hearted, peaceful space.
Oh, how I got I don't know, I have never had this kind of funny glow in my picture. I don't know if you're seeing it, but I look like
a great bright light.
I turned off my light to see if that was it, but I still have it. So maybe I'm just projecting the energy, because
Yes.
I look like I have a little foggy cloud around me. Okay, so you started working with your dog, who obviously showed you what you were supposed to be doing, and I just love that. And then, of course, you must have gone right out to your horse after your dog showed you, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I had a really interesting, one of the first sessions that I ever had was with a horse that I was sponsoring. He was an older horse. He was in his early 20s, and we just would go out on the trail, up in the Oakland Hills. We'd just go out bareback, and I didn't know the trails, but he did. So he took me. Okay. I'm like, where are we going today? Sometimes it was longer, sometimes it was shorter. He always brought me home. It was a great experience. So I thought, oh, I wonder what he thinks about Reiki. So after I rode him out on the trail and he's eating his dinner, I went in to his stall, and I just sort of stood with him. And he came over, and I put my hands on if horses come to you, then you can touch them. So I put my hands on his shoulder, and he got very quiet. And then he had this strange episode where his body shook like this, and then he lifted up his hind leg and he held it in the air. And then after a few minutes, I just stayed with him. He put his leg down and he went, and then he went over in the corner and went to sleep. And I was like, what just happened? Like, I don't even get what happened. So I found his owner, his person. And I'm like, I told her about it. I said, do you know why he would hold up his leg and what's going on? And she goes, oh my God. She said, she had adopted him, but before she had him, he was out on this property, just wild kind of, and he had gotten stuck in a barbed wire fence. Wow. That leg wrapped around that leg, and he had stood for like 2 days with the leg up until someone found him. Wow. And they thought they were going to have to put him down. They didn't think that he would ever be, able to stand or walk, much less be ridden. But he's like, he was an Arab, so total survivor, right? And so he got better, he got well. And the next time I saw him, I looked and I could see like little tiny scars all around that leg, which I had never noticed before. So it was interesting to me, like from the very beginning, I thought, wow, Reiki is not just about being peaceful in this moment, but it reaches deeper than that into those places that we may have forgotten, pushed down, repressed, that need to heal, that are, if we're ready to heal. So I thought that was just so fascinating. And then, just every experience with the dogs in the shelter and everything is just more and more I was just like so amazed. And,
what took you into a shelter? I mean, because it sounds like that would be a pretty anxious place for you.
Yeah. Well, because I love animals, and my dog, Dakota, at the time, my soul dog, he was from a shelter, actually in Sacramento. And at the time when I got him, they actually, they sold their dogs to Davis Dog Lab at the time. And so when my friend and I went in just to see if there were anything cute puppies, and they had a big sign saying, warning, these dogs sold to Davis Dog Lab. So you wouldn't drop off your dog and not know what's going to happen. And so I'm like, how long do you keep them? And they're like, oh, like 48 hours. And I'm like, oh. So I told my roommate at the time, I'm like, well, I hope there's something cute because we have to get one now, So I ended up, getting him. It was like on his last day, and he was a cute little 13-week-old Aussie mix, just adorable. And he ended up being my soul dog. But I always thought about all those dogs that weren't as lucky as him and how amazing he was. And they never got the chance. Right. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And so when I eventually, that was when I was in school getting my teaching credential, and then I moved to San Francisco and got a job teaching in the public schools. I immediately was like, okay, where's the city shelter? I want to start walking dogs. Like, I want to take them out of their, it was just part of like giving back, because I was so grateful for the shelter dog I had discovered accidentally, and here was such a big part of my life. But I was already doing that, and then I learned Reiki. And so it was like, oh, well, here's something. I wonder what would happen if after I walk the dogs, if I sit with them and do Reiki. And I saw so many amazing just experiences, just peacefulness and stress relief, and even dogs that were like unadoptable getting adopted like shortly after a session.
Oh, how cool.
So it just became, and then I was like, eventually, several years later, I was like, oh, I want to teach everyone to do this in shelters so that we can get more dogs adopted and more cats adopted. And, there's so much compassion fatigue with the staff. We can relieve that. Like, there was just so much that it could do to help. So that's where my nonprofit kind of came from.
How cool. So, and so with your nonprofit, tell us a little bit about that. How does that, do you have other people working with you, or how's that going?
So we have about 200 members around the world, mostly in the United States, but we also have Canada, we have Europe and the UK members. We have a couple members in Japan, and, kind of Australia, kind of around the world.
Yeah, I know how that happens.
Yeah, we all find each other through this great online technology, right? It's so wonderful. Everyone in my nonprofit is a volunteer. What we all have in common is we've all been trained in the Let Animals Lead method. So this particular brand of Animal Reiki, where we let animals lead and we don't focus on touch, and we have particular ways that we do this work. And then each of the members in their community go into the shelters or sanctuaries. We have a lot of people that work in like wild animal sanctuaries or farm animal sanctuaries and so on. And they offer
not just dogs,
right? Every species: tigers, bears, cows and pigs, like everything, birds, So they go in their world, in their neighborhood. They go in and they volunteer a couple times a week and just offer Reiki in their shelters. And they also offer training to the staff and volunteers. And sometimes it's a formal Reiki certification class. Sometimes it's just, a meditation class, or like we have a class called Self-Care for Animal Caregivers, where it's just really about taking a moment for yourself as a shelter staff person. And, you've gone through a really tough day, and here's how we can kind of give ourselves some TLC.
It can be very stressful.
Yeah. So anyway, we have really a variety of the foundation or my 501c3 that we have. What we provide is educational materials, outreach materials, and training for everyone to go out and independently create these relationships and support in their communities all over the world.
So do you also work with horse rescues?
Yes. In fact, I have a couple of videos of some Reiki at horse rescues if you'd like to see.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Ready to watch?
Can't figure out why I'm looking so auric.
You're just in the Reiki space, that's all.
Yes, so.
Okay, so let's see. Let's start with this one. I love this one. So let me set it up because it's only 30 seconds long. So let me explain it first. So the first video I'm going to show you is from Remus Memorial Horse Sanctuary, one of my favorite places on the planet. It's in England. It is about an hour outside of London. They have over 200 animals, mostly horses, but they also have donkeys. I have a donkey video I can show you.
Oh, great.
As well. And they have tiny little ponies. So 3 of the videos I have today for you guys is from Remus. And they take in the most traumatized, abused, neglected horses in the area, in the London area. And they have really bad laws and the things that are going on right now. She's been doing this for 30 years. She said it's the worst for horses right now that it's ever been. Mm. So they take the ones that no one else will, and some of them don't make it. Many of them do. They have probably a dozen or more horses in their 40s, and they've had 2 horses in their 50s. So their specialty is senior elder care of horses. So what I love is they have these huge big pastures, and when the horses heal, then they're let out with their particular, they match them to the group that is good for them. And so they basically just live wild on these big, huge, beautiful English countryside pastures. So the first video I'm going to show you from Remus was during a class, and I brought us into one of the pastures, and we just made a circle and we just started meditating. The horses were just off in the distance, and the horses actually came over to be a part of our healing meditation circle. And really the way we work is to let animals decide. So they decide how close and what they're going to do and how they're going to connect, and we just hold space. So I think in this video, you'll be able to really, I guess you'll have to allow me to screen share, and then I can.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't set you up as that was one of the things I usually do when we are
no problem
in that little moment beforehand.
Okay, here we go. So we're all just there meditating, and the horses literally came, and you can see they're meditating with us. And there's no need for us to try to chase after the horses. We're just literally, we're focusing on our meditation. We're holding space.
That's so interesting because he's just rubbing his nose, that one horse, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
It's he's not actually trying to eat anything. So I have to say, this is again the so interesting connections, because I'm not sure if you're familiar with Sharon Wilsey's Horse Speak. Have you heard of her?
No. Mm-mm.
So Sharon Wilsey she's written something called Horse Speak, and she decodes and encodes horse body language. But the piece that was so striking to me is she talks about O posture. And all of your people were in what she calls O posture, with their hands just cupped one on the other and making an O with their arms.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I think you'll really enjoy it when you look at that, because what I find with Sharon is we do these things innately, and then she comes back and says, and this is why it goes like this and this and this, but everybody's in this beautiful O posture.
So in Reiki, we work, one of the meditation we were doing in that moment was with the hara. And the hara is, in Japanese, means belly. And it's really your lower belly, your center, your physical center. And so you visualize the breath coming in all the way to the hara, and then coming out and expanding. And so you put your hands on the hara to help you to create that centered, kind of grounded, visualized breath. And so that's why you saw us. And so we often have that.
But it's so awesome, because it just, again, what I keep seeing is that I talk to all these different people, and the more I talk to all these different people, the more we keep coming to the same space, not the same place. We all have our own little different sort of, I think of it as everybody has ice cream, and some people like vanilla and weird chocolate or strawberry, but you can't escape the commonalities.
Well, it's different doors into the same room, right?
Exactly. And so when I see that, it's like, oh, there it is again. I recognize that. It's a different door, but
that's beautiful.
It's the same thing. And so that was, I don't know, if you want to play the video again, I think that'd be great.
Or I have another one.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So let me show you the next one. So this is one of the ponies. They have a pasture with these tiny little ponies. They're very kind of standoffish, but not when we do Reiki. So this was something I caught during one of the classes when I just looked around and saw a student, and this pony had come up to her, and they were just in love. It was so beautiful.
Yeah. And I love the way the wind's blowing their hair together too. Just everything.
Yes. They both have the same hairstyle.
Yeah.
So sometimes animals, I want to show you this next video also at Remus, as one of their donkeys. And donkeys are very physical creatures, and they love touch with Reiki. So we only use touch. We'll just stand in meditation unless the horse or the animal, any animal, comes over and wants touch. And they're very clear about what they want. And so I thought this was so cute. My student trying to respond as the donkey is very forcefully saying, I want Reiki here, I want Reiki here, I want you to do this, I want you to do that. So this is a really cute one as well. I've turned it on mute because the wind is really loud.
Yeah, you can see it's quite a blowy day. So.
Often like that in England.
Oh, he's so cute. Look at him. He's so grooving on what she's doing there.
Totally.
Yep.
Just so tuned in. And you know, this woman, she's never been around donkeys. She has no idea. And so we just learn in the classes, you just respond to what they're showing you. And you're just holding space. And you're just
so specific, isn't he?
Yes.
Well, and again, you know, watching this video, the eye blinks that we know are associated with calming and parasympathetic, right? There's a lot of eye blinking going on. The ears are so carefully listening, you know, and just that just sweet way that he turns his head into her, and those eye blinks are just, it's so fascinating.
Such a beautiful boy, huh?
Yeah, he is. He's really cute. And donkeys can be very strong in their personality. Like someone watching that, I've been around donkeys, and he's so careful there.
Yeah, which is not always the case, because one year I went in and I was doing Reiki with the donkeys, and the alpha donkey decided that I was his Reiki person and no one else could have any. And he like chased everyone else to the other side of the field, and he cornered me. And he's like, you're staying here and you're doing Reiki. And he didn't come into me or anything. He just stood there and he's like, go. It's so classic. And I think I have two more that I can show you.
Great. These are awesome.
So this is at Brighthaven Sanctuary, which is a sanctuary I taught at for over 13 years here in Northern California. Unfortunately, it's closed now, but this was one of the horses, Mocha, she just loves Reiki so much, and she's so receptive to it, and you'll see how she responds. And she's actually missing an eye, but she shows so much trust in that Reiki space, just really being there. And you can see she's like grazing. We just let animals kind of come into the space, come out of the space. We just hold the space. And whatever they want to do within that is perfect. And again, the focus here would be, for the practitioner, the focus would just be meditation, and the meditation just letting go into that open-hearted, compassionate, peaceful space, and just being with them in that moment.
Yes, so it's so definite how she's going to each hand, and it doesn't look like food seeking at all, but connecting. Like she made a connection to each hand very specifically.
I had a beautiful experience at Brighthaven where there was a horse that they'd rescued from the Mexican rodeo, and I don't know if you know anything about it's a terrible place. So there were two horses that were brought in, and they were so terrified that they had to get them out of the trailer into the pasture. They had to park a line of cars and then open the gates and then open the trailer, and they just shot out into the back of the pasture, and they would not come anywhere close to people. If they would see us come out, they would shoot to the way opposite side, just hate people, terrified. Well, over time, they learned that, oh, people bring food and they're nice and nobody's asking anything of us. They're just letting us be. So they gained more trust, but they were still, I would say they would stay 50 feet away, at least. When we would go in and do Reiki with the horses, they would just kind of watch, but from a distance. So one morning before class, when I was out there, I went out there, and Mocha, the paint that I just was showing you, she was out there near one of the white horses named Ariel, a gray horse, Ariel, who was out there, one of the rescued horses. And they were kind of close. And so I went and I stood and I just started doing my meditation at the fence. I didn't go inside. I was at the fence. And Ariel was just staring at me, just looking at me, just like almost reaching her nose towards me. And she was so tuned in. And Mocha was grazing, and Mocha looked up and she saw Ariel looking at me. She looked at Ariel, she looked at me. And she came over very purposefully, and she walked to the fence and stood right next to me at the fence line. And so Ariel saw her there, like between me and her, and she came closer and came closer and came closer. When she was about 10 feet away from the fence, Mocha very slowly walked away, leaving it just me and her 10 feet away, and just stood there. And I just very gently placed my hands like this inside, like resting on the fence, and just my hands inside the fence. And she looked at me, and we just stayed there for a long time. And then she very slowly walked towards me and put her nose into my hand. And when it touched, she went like it was like an electric shock. And then she went, wait, and she looked around, and Mocha was still standing close, and she's like, and it's okay. And then she just rested her muzzle. And that moment where she sought contact and kept it, and we held that space, was like, oh, I was just in tears. You know, I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe that she's trusting me like this. And for me, like, Reiki creates those possibilities for traumatized animals to trust again, because we don't ask anything from them, we don't force anything on them, and we're radiating this peacefulness and love, just like embodiment of love and loving kindness and compassion. And it's like they can't resist it, is kind of how it feels. It's really beautiful.
I think they're so designed to resonate with it. I think that, you know, when you have herd animals, there's probably a resonant field that surrounds the herd. And so that would be, you know, I don't know that anybody has ever looked at that, but it just made me think about it, that, you know, when you start to chain certain motors and things together, they entrain, and the whole system starts taking on you know, women, that happens all the time with their cycle. But that resonance, and, you know, the other thought I just had was that I think people probably move too fast. I think that, you know, we move fast, not that they don't move fast when they need to move, but we move fast in sort of an erratic way.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Like, we talk with our hands, those would be on the ground.
And our mind, just think about our thoughts in our mind. The energy in our mind is like blah, 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 like thinking about all these things. And I believe they sense what's inside our mind. So especially if Reiki creates, like, you know, the surface of a pond where it's still, and you can see, you know, all the clouds and in the reflection, and it's still. To me, that's when you practice Reiki, your mind goes from this to this, and you just feel that glass surface, and it just quiets everything. And I think animals just go
at last. You know, you have some big fans out there. Hula, is it Hula Horn? And Barb Heck was saying that you explained to her years ago why her German Shepherd would not accept her hands on her, Barb's hands on the German Shepherd. Too much energy, but she would place herself behind me and sit back to back, which is really interesting. And we do, you know, in riding, I can remember some of my friends used to say, oh, I have electric butt, you know, and I make all the horses kind of electric. And other people would go, oh, all the horses I ride calm down. And I think we do each have our resonance. You know, like, I'm not everybody's cup of tea because I talk fast. I've been told that for years and years and years. Like, this is how I talk. Get over it, right? But we do have our own resonance, and within that, we're tunable. And so, you know, Reiki sounds like it's a really great practice to help us kind of get into that more peaceful place. And the beauty of it is you get to see the responses in the animals. And that's why I love the animals, because they're so pure in their responses. There's no, you know, pretending I'm going to do this because I think this is what you like. That just doesn't happen.
Exactly. Right. And and also they will tell you if they don't like your energy.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so it's really clear if you go in to do Reiki and you're all upset and emotional about something and you're not even focused or present, and they'll just look at you like, are you kidding? And they'll just leave.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh shoot, I wasn't, you know, in a good space. I've got to like calm myself down. And so, you know, we could go into like a human like yoga class or something, and we could be like all namaste, but inside we might be all over the place. Nobody knows, right? animals know our physical posture can be perfect, but if inside it's all like jumbled and just out of balance and out of whack, they'll show us. And so it really helps us to get in more balance ourselves, to notice when we're out of balance, and Reiki has tools to bring us back to that balance when we get knocked over a little bit. I want to share one more thing with you. My book, Heart to Heart with Horses, some of your viewers might enjoy this. It's on Amazon.
Oh,
and
cool.
I have a ton of stories about horse Reiki. I have like diagrams and pictures about how to offer sessions. I have like a dozen meditations to try with your horse, sitting, standing, walking. So Heart to Heart with Horses, the Equine Lover's Guide to Reiki. I recommend any of you who were watching this, who are interested, who want to learn more, who want to try something right now with your horse. You can get it as an ebook on Amazon, or you can get the hard copy.
Awesome. Well, Kathleen, I want to thank you so much for joining me today, because it's been really, really interesting. And I just love to see all the interconnections. I think that's the piece that for me is that it's so interstitial. It's so much a part of us in all these different ways that we can express that. And this is another very, very curious and interesting way. And it's just been a pleasure to have you on as my guest today. So I want to thank you for taking the time to join us, and everybody who's been with us on the webinar. So her book is Heart to Heart with Horses, and she says it's available on Amazon. So check that out. I think that'd be a great read for the weekend. And so this and all my other webinars you can find on the Surefoot Equine YouTube channel. You give me a little bit of time to get these posted, please, about 24 hours or so. Sometimes I'm faster than other times. Today is Tuesday, so tomorrow my guest is Bob Bowker. We finally got him back, I hope. We failed last week because his internet was so bad, and it's just been a little bit of a struggle, but he's the hoof guru. So please join us tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Then you can go to the murdochmethod.com website to sign up for that webinar. Thank you again for joining me and telling us about Reiki. It's been fascinating, and it's been a pleasure to have you as my guest.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful talking to you, Wendy.
Yep. And take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.